We are live now. There you go. We're into it with Warren Lees. Hello, thank you for coming in.
Well, thanks very much. I haven't been in here before, and I'm looking forward to the experience, probably.
I have to say, my dad in the 1980s sold insurance and did a bunch of things, good old Catholic boy, Hibernian society, that kind of stuff. And he had a few contacts with the New Zealand cricket team. So as a young fella, I'm a 1973 model, so, you know, in that kind of 80s was my yeah.
Very.
No, thanks. It doesn't feel it when you look at the grey in the beard. Formative years. So Martin Snedden was one of his clients, and Martin Crowe was one of his, someone he worked with on a business initiative and stuff. So for me, the sort of, I guess, late 70s through late 80s is my complete, you know, these are where the gods of cricket were for me upcoming. So you sit in there. So I'm really excited to talk to you today as, you know, someone I watched on the telly when I was a young fella and looked up to and thought, these are the guys I want to be one day. So it's exciting. I'm excited.
So I'm actually lucky to be here because I'm non-Catholic, you see. So I feel as though it's quite special.
You've broken through the old boys network, have you?
Yes. Well, on Sunday mornings, I was probably quite tired. Some of them got up and went away to church, didn't they? Yeah, well, I didn't. No.
Yeah. So it's great. It's great. I remember doing. I remember at primary school. I can't remember what it was about, but doing a project, and it ended up the subject matter was the New Zealand cricket team, and I still remember drawing all their names in this big, what do they call it, Jace, cartridge paper? Those big white bits of paper like that when you're at school, is it cartridge paper? Yeah. And I remember writing all the names of it, and I remember writing Terry Wright, and then a little speech bubble, and I wrote wrong. So I don't know why, but that made my teacher laugh.
Oh, because you deliberately put one of the...
I thought it was a joke, you know, right and wrong. It's comedy for like a 9-year-old.
See, Terry Wright could get in the current team. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Did I say Terry Wright? I meant John Wright.
Yes, well, I thought that. But
sorry, did I say Terry Wright?
You did.
I'm thinking All Blacks.
But even Terry Wright could get in there.
They're probably in there now.
Team.
Yeah,
That's
you're right.
Yeah.
And I remember Dad managed to record a conversation with Martin Snedden, and that I can't even remember what it was about, but that was a part of my kind of overall project. And so cricket in the 70s, 80s is a huge part of my, you know, formative life. So I'm very, very excited to have you in.
Well, that's two of us, because cricket was quite a big part of my life during those years as well. Probably.
I was really interested to see that you got your MBE in 1989.
Yeah.
Like, as I say this out loud, it's not supposed to sound disrespectful, but that seems very early in a career for services to cricket. Like, often someone will play cricket their whole life, coach cricket, and then sort of at the end they get the award. But did it feel quite early for you to get it?
Yes, in a way I was surprised, and most people are, but there is an explanation behind it, and it was mainly for cricket, but the actual award was given for services to cricket and the community.
Okay.
And I did speak to people who had spoken, I guess, or written on my behalf.
Because you get nominated.
Yes, you do.
And then you get approached to say, would you accept it? Is that right?
But the people who nominated you, they needed, I don't know, 12 or 15 people. So, so someone supported me from somewhere. Yeah. And I suppose in those days, in a smaller city, you're more recognisable than perhaps you are in the Aucklands. You know what I mean? And that was something that affected most of the people who came from the smaller places, because you became a big fish in a small pond.
Right.
I spoke at just about every community organisation you could think of, and some of them 2 or 3 times.
Right.
So there was the Rotary, and there's the Round Table, and there's the Lions, and all those sort of things. So, and I went all around Otago and South, and if they rang, I never said no.
Right.
I thought because it was a charitable sort of event, charitable group, community group, and I got reasonably well known for doing that, and people used to say, God, you just front up in different places. You're in Winton, you're in Kurau, and that was the community side of it. And I never joined any of those clubs, but I felt as if I was doing my community service by entertaining them or doing that sort of thing. It's another thing that about those awards that amazes me, because and things have changed, and I don't know that everyone agrees with me over this, but I'm quite strong about this. If it was a community award, or if it was services too, it was actually for hands-on services too. Right. So I was a Halberg trustee in those days, and I can remember getting in the pool with the physically disabled and doing things. And it's always hurt me a wee bit, because I used to think that all the people who got community awards had done their community service. Right. None of those people ever paid for the award.
Right. Paid in blood and sweat and tears.
Well, that's what we paid in. Yeah. These days, you see people the rich and famous get awards and they've never even spoken to some of these people, but they've written out a check.
I always kind of think that about, I mean, up to including knighthood sort of thing, the people who, like if your job, quote unquote job, or if your, let's say vocation, because sometimes it might not be paid, but if that gives you an amount of, let's say, fame and money, then that's part of the reward. I like to see the MBEs, the knighthoods, that go to the people who you haven't heard of so much, but they've been working for the Deaf Foundation or whatever it is for 60 years.
Well, I've always thought that. I've always, and I've never complained about it or anything, but it just amazed me. I read them every time, as we all do, when you go down, how many are from the Otago and how many people are, look at all the sporting ones. But it's always just annoyed me a little bit that the number of people now getting the awards are the names you know even beforehand.
Yeah.
But I do
especially the top ones, like the knighthoods in there.
But I like reading the awards where, and there's a wee bit in the newspaper, there's always an explanation, and you see the lady who in, say, Koorau, that's just an example, but I mean the lady who's worked with writing for the disabled or whatever it is, and she's done it for 25 years and she's never made any money, never been paid anything, that's community service. Community service is not the $10,000 check you gave someone. I mean, it's a completely different thing. It's a commercial thing. And it's just something it's always stuck in my throat a wee bit.
It's interesting you would use the word commercial, because you think about those sorts of like Queen's birthday honours as being the opposite of commercial. So writing a check, you shouldn't be able to buy one. I mean, I'm not putting this out there to be critical of a political party, but like the Sir John Keys seems to be a done deal. It's like no matter what happened during that tenure, no matter how good or bad, let's not even say John Key, but that politician was for the country, whether it's a Sir Winston Peters or a Dame Jacinda Ardern or whatever, no matter how good or bad the country has done under them, it's a given. They've done that, so they get this automatically.
Exactly. It's almost like it's a right. If you're here for 5 years, that's what you're going to get at the end of it, no matter what. I mean, and I'm not criticising all those people. It's not their choice. They offer it.
But there is a choice for that. I certainly know for the knighthoods, they approach you because they want to know if you're going to decline it, and if you decline it, they don't do it. So there is an element. I don't know if it's the same for the MBE, but certainly for those top ones, you need to say yes, I'll accept it.
But however, yes, you're right. We're going back to the original thing, 1989, and I guess at that stage that was the end of a playing career.
Yep.
It was only the start of my speaking engagements, but and there was more cricket to come, and I didn't know that. Once I was finished playing, I thought that was the end of it, and it was quite a sad Warren Lees for 18 months, thinking, oh, that was it. It was great fun while it lasted, and now it's all over.
Because you were in the Test team from like 79 to 83-ish. Was that about right? Like as the preeminent, and then that horrible Ian Smith came along and thought, I'll take this job.
Oh, there were lots of horribles. Don't worry about that. There were other horribles came along in between time. I started in 76 and went to Pakistan, and a disastrous tour. We couldn't play, but fortunately I got some runs in one game, and all of a sudden I was a hero. But it only lasted 24 hours. I was back to the normal person after that. And I played to 83, but in between times, I didn't play all the time. So there was Jockey Woods from Nelson.
Right.
There was Peter Webb, came from Auckland.
Right.
There were other people came and sort of took my place at different times. But I was sort of basically with the team on and off that whole time. It was one of those careers that is a funny thing, really. I loved playing first-class cricket for Otago.
Right.
And I was extremely confident. And I was very happy in that environment. It was a family group, and we had some very successful years. And people perform their best when they're at their happiest and most relaxed.
Yeah. That's the same in life. I mean, same as jobs, same as whatever they're doing.
Exactly. And then occasionally they'd say, you're in the New Zealand team and we're playing the first test against Pakistan or whatever it was going to be at Eden Park. Absolutely uncomfortable.
Right.
As soon as it stretched me to the next level, and I've always had a theory about this. Not many players from Otago and Southland who joined the cricket team during my time could I have called normal. It's a strange thing. When I say normal, I look at some of the players who joined the New Zealand team from Canterbury or Wellington or even Northern Districts, and they just fitted in like a glove. They were new to the team, and they went straight into the team. They sat in the dressing room. They knew people. They were confident, and you could tell they were going to perform reasonably well. Most of the people who came from further south, because it's a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
And of course I was proud to be selected, and so was my mother, and so was my wife, or whatever. When your name comes out, and there is a time in your life where you actually like to be liked.
Yeah, of course.
And there are other times in your life where you want to be rather anonymous, you know. But when you get picked in those teams, you are quite excited. You cannot hide the fact. But going to the actual test match in Christchurch, or be it Wellington or wherever, was almost a step too far.
Right.
And I never ever, apart from that very young, cheeky, long-haired, cigarette-smoking kid who was in Pakistan in 1976, apart from that time, I always felt like I was underdone. I wasn't ready, not just to play Test cricket, but even to be in that environment.
Is it because when you talk about like the family-run affair in Otago, was the culture so different? As when you say they were a bit weird, it was
We're
like
friends.
the culture so different between the Otago culture to the New Zealand culture that it was just, I don't know, it was like going in there and speaking another language, like being a full immersion student all of a sudden.
Absolutely. It was such a strange environment for me to walk into. Things like, where are we going for a drink tonight? I will go to this lounge bar, and when you go to this lounge bar, the guys were drinking gin and tonic.
Yeah.
I'd never had a spirit in my life.
You wanted a Spates.
If it wasn't brown and in a jug, I couldn't drink it. I mean, and people said, well, that didn't matter. Yes, it actually did. Yes, it actually did, because it made you feel like you were so unused to it. Was it an element, and we don't really have this in New Zealand, but did it feel like an element of class? Like the posh blokes having the GNT, the lesser blokes having a pint? Yeah, people. If people are listening or watching this, they'll probably think I'm a bit critical. But we haven't even started yet. Wait till we talk about this cricket team. Well,
current lot.
Well, I used to laugh about. I used to openly laugh about the Auckland players. Mm-hmm. They came to the ground in their sports car. Yep. Most had blonde wives. Not that there's anything against or for against that. I'm not complaining. But some of them wore cravats. Really? A cravat. I thought it was like a handkerchief. I mean, seriously. Wow. They always had impeccable gear, and I had an old pair of shoes with my toe poking out the end. New bats every year. Yeah. Remember when Auckland was sponsored by Old Spice way back in the day, and we didn't even know about sponsorship in Dunedin in those days, and we'd just gather our gear together and almost take it to the ground in a sack. Not quite, but so we used to laugh about further north. It was actually a strange thing, and it became a way of motivating people, because the little brother down south, the poor brother down south. So we used that as a motivation. It's not always a good motivation, because there's a negative element to that, but it was like, we'll beat the big rich boys up north. And you didn't beat them often, but if you beat them one time in 5, it was like winning the World Cup. There does seem to be some parallels to rugby in that as well. I mean, you think about, especially in the 80s, I remember sitting in Eden Park, I've told this story before, and the Auckland rugby team with those superstars being so arrogant. I laugh about it because it is pretty funny when you think about it from a fan's point of view. I can remember sitting in those stands as like a 10, 12, 14-year-old, and having the announcer come across at Eden Park. I can't remember what the team was. Let's say it was Manawatu. And playing Auckland today, Manawatu. Thanks for coming, Manawatu. We need the practice. That was literally what was being said by the announcer. So it sounds like, but with that money and with that, the more resource came the results. And I wonder now, you think about, like, well, let's look at Brendan McCullum, Otago player, probably one of the best moneyed players in the world, especially from a New Zealand point of view. Yeah. And I wonder if with that money now coming through the country, it levels that playing field for resource, and maybe it doesn't create that different culture between teams so much. Yeah, perhaps so. But I mean, I've always doesn't mean it's better. Just means maybe it doesn't change it. I've always had this theory, I've noticed it in sport, and I've noticed it even in life. I think New Zealand's a strange country, the way we react to each other. Yeah. And I think that the further south in the country you live, the bigger chips on your shoulder. So Wellington, I always used to think, and I can talk about the cricket, but I can't talk about the other sports so much. But the Wellington people didn't really like the Auckland people at all. Who did? Well, it was just one of those things, but it gets worse than what I've just said, because the Canterbury people didn't like the Wellington or the Auckland people.
Right.
Or the Hamilton people.
Well, isn't that famous saying that like, I support whatever my team is and anyone playing Auckland?
Yeah. Well, so as you go down the country, you've got more people to dislike.
Yeah.
You see, so Wellington only basically disliked Auckland, but Canterbury disliked Wellington and Auckland.
Yeah.
Dunedin people
hated everyone.
Everyone north of the Waitaki. We hate a lot. And when I say we hate them, we don't actually hate them, but we felt as if we were competing against all of those people.
Yeah.
And it's the further south you go, and as I say, the bigger chip on your shoulder about life. And that's not just sport. I don't. It's sort of like a jealousy in a strange way.
Well, having moved to Dunedin from Auckland about 5 years ago,
right,
I kind of a little bit can see what you're saying. I remember we got off the ferry in the South Island. The very first person was a woman at the supermarket. We stopped and took the kids into the supermarket, got some food once we'd got off the ferry, so it was Picton. Happened to have a woman in the street say, talking to the kids, nice, friendly South Island. What are you guys up to? And they're like, we're moving to Dunedin from Auckland. And the amount of vitriol she threw at Auckland, like obviously to a kid appropriate level, but basically going, you've been saved.
And you're so lucky to get out.
It was so funny. I laughed so hard because it was literally the first person on the trip down to speak to in the South Island was just like, those bastards, on a lower level.
It is funny because when we played, we turned that into a motivation. So, and we started off talking about the Otago culture in the family. We're a smaller town, so all our wives knew each other. All the little kids that we had all played together. They all went to the ground. When we used to play in Alexandra, the whole team would go there, and families, and be put up in a motel for a week while we played 3 one-day games or something. So, and even in the mornings, I can remember Stephen Bock and I going down to fill the paddling pools on the boundary, then going back for breakfast because we couldn't go to cricket until all the kids were looked after. So it became a bit of a family thing. And during the winter, we'd all go to watch the rugby together. When you're in a big city, being Auckland or Sydney or Melbourne or wherever, you only see, in those days, you only saw your players, your teammates, at cricket or at practice. You had nothing to do with them outside that. So it was easy to get a group feeling about it. So you grow your own culture that way. And for a short time, 4 years, I suppose, or 4 seasons, we had a very, very strong team. Not a lot of New Zealand players, but everyone was performing above themselves.
Okay.
Above the skill level they brought to the team, they played better than that because they were happy. Right. They didn't care who they sat with on the plane. They sat with everyone. They didn't care who they sat beside in the dressing room, and people didn't have their own place.
So no cliques.
There were no cliques. There were absolutely none, and it was quite open. Not always working well, but you would sort those things out.
Yeah.
It was just a great environment. It really was, and something that it was. You possibly, people will say you're a bit cheeky to say this, but I enjoyed playing for Otago a lot more than I enjoyed playing for New Zealand.
No,
even though you felt good about it.
I understand that.
Yeah.
There are people who talk about playing for their high school team better than the college team or their club side more so than their provincial side and all sorts of sports. Jace, you're going to jump in? You have something you want to add, sir?
I know, it was just about the whole Auckland Dunedin hatred because being a boy I grew up in Dunedin, so I grew up here, and then when I was 18 I left. And so I moved to Wellington. I was in Wellington for 8 years, and then I was moved from Wellington to Auckland, and I was in Auckland for 7 or 8 years as well. And I remember very distinctly a similar story to Pat in a way. Well, not quite. It's right at the opposite actually. But being, because we're bred to hate. Like I can understand systemic racism also from a point of view because we're bred to hate anybody north of Dunedin. We dislike Christchurch. We don't really like Wellington, and we hate Auckland.
Yeah.
And I lived in Auckland. I moved to Auckland, and always swore, that the F in Jaffa would never stand for friendly, which the Aucklanders make legit, I believe. And I remember, anyway, a bunch of me and some mates went on a trip to, I think it was Taupo or something like that. We went and we wanted to go on a bushwalk somewhere, and so we went to the information centre and said, "Oh, can we get a map?" And the lady's like, "Oh yeah, cool. Here's a map. These are some of the great walks." And there's she said that. So where are you guys from? And I'm like, "Oh, we're from Auckland." And she literally said, "Oh." And I was just like, all of a sudden I was on the receiving end of the hatred that I have been brought up to extend towards the North Islanders. It's always a bit tongue in cheek. Some people take it way more seriously, but it's always a bit tongue in cheek.
It is a wee bit,
but it's just such a weird. I think every country has it in the world. Like it's either the South, you either hate the South or you hate the North, and it's also reciprocal. I think Aucklanders. I remember having this conversation with my wife as well because she's an Aucklander, and
but you saved her from it.
I saved her from it, yeah.
Exactly.
And he kind of basically said, well, Aucklanders don't really even think about the rest.
That's exactly what I was about to add.
They don't even really think about the rest of the country. They don't care what the rest of the country thinks.
No, in fact, that brings us to start thinking they only think about themselves. Actually,
there is a saying in Auckland that New Zealand finishes at the Bombay Hills.
Yeah, exactly. South of the Bombay is.
But while we criticise, and it's easy to do that. Some of my very best friends in sport, actually individually live in Auckland, and they are. And Martin Sned's a hell of he doesn't live there now, but Gary Troop was a great guy that still is, and I really enjoyed his company, and he's one of my best friends in sport. So. It was easy, when you talk about the rugby team, which was Fitzpatrick's team, that team. Didn't the whole country just absolutely want them to lose?
Yeah,
it was just amazing. But they're actually nice guys.
Yeah.
And if you went and had a beer with one of them, well, I think they probably were individually, but it was just that you need to have that competitive spirit. We all have it. It's like the Canterbury Rugby, the Crusaders. Bloody good players and a great organisation. Canterbury Rugby is probably the lead organisation of all the sporting groups in New Zealand.
Yeah, if not one of the lead professional teams in the world.
But what we really want is we want them to lose, don't we? It's a funny thing.
You know what? It depends. It depends. If the final's against the Lions from South Africa, no, I want them to win. If it's against the Highlanders, I want them to lose. So there is a little bit of that as well, because what I find interesting is it's this. I'm going to use the word competitiveness rather than hatred, but the competitiveness with your big brother. We do it to Australia, but then actually when that one you compete with needs your support, so let's say Australia's playing England in the final of the Rugby World Cup, then New Zealanders primarily are going, go Australia. But if it's New Zealand playing, you know what I mean? So I think there's an element of, it is that big brother, you fight with your big brother in the playground and at home and stuff, but then when your big brother makes the first 15 or the first 11, you're proud as punch.
Yeah, you are, but you wouldn't tell anyone. The other thing is we still have a little bit of tall poppy, don't we, though?
Totally.
And tall poppy can be over a team situation, or it can be over individuals, because I've seen that. I've seen the tall poppy thing really affect individuals, as in poor old the late Martin Crowe. I mean, God, he was a good player. And by God, he was a serious cricketer. And I was fortunate to be the coach when he was the captain, you see. So I got very close. And yet it really hurt me so much to hear people wanting him to fail. How the hell would they do that? It used to just amaze me. And he was by far our best cricketer. And at that stage, probably one of the best cricketers in the world.
And potentially, if you think about it from a batsman's point of view, still one of our best, if not our best.
But when they get up there on that pedestal, we want to put them on the pedestal, some of those players. Richard Haddon's a good example too. Yeah. I mean, he fought, he really did, fought himself, and he trained, and he honed his skills, and became the best, all right? So we wanted to lift him up on the pedestal, and we used to think, that's our Richard, or that's our Martin Crowe. Once they got up there, the stories you hear third hand are all about knocking them down again.
Yeah, how dare you put yourself on a pedestal? Hang on, I didn't put myself up there.
But it ends up that if you keep putting people on a pedestal, they believe that they own the pedestal.
Yeah.
So what we do is we say, well, no, you don't. We're going to cut you off that. It's a horrible thing, isn't it?
Martin Crowe also, one of the loveliest men in the world. So when I was I went to two secondary schools in Auckland, St Peter's College in Epsom, then went to Sacred Heart College in Glenannis, Catholic school was. And
I want to know why you had to leave the first.
Because
you don't have to go into it.
I can tell you. I'll tell you. But anyway, when I went to St Peter's in Kaiba Pass there in central Auckland, there was a gym called the Institute of Sport.
Right.
Jim, he was very big in the 80s with new methods of training and that sort of stuff. Gosh, what was his name? Anyway, Institute of Sport. And it was where Martin Crowe went. And my dad had some dealings with Martin Crowe for a business interest in Fiji. Martin Crowe still used to love going there, and they had a connection. And I was at the gym often playing rugby or cricket or whatever, and going to the gym as well as probably a 14-year-old. every time this greatest batsman in the world, the person I looked up to, would come over and talk to me, and I was like, what the... you know what I mean? But he didn't need to. And I mean, like, he was an idol. Obviously, he was an idol of mine. I was a cricketer and a batsman and that sort of stuff. And he would come during his gym session and talk to me at the Institute of Sport, and I just blew my brain. Just this nice, lovely guy.
People didn't understand him, did they?
No. And I mean, I didn't know him, but just what I saw in that. But then you could say the same. My again, talk about this is like an ode to my father, this podcast.
That's fine.
He was president of the Auckland Rugby Referees Association. So we went to quite a lot of the after-match functions with, if a game played at Eden Park, so be it Auckland or the All Blacks. And all the guys there, lovely. I mean, there's a couple who weren't, but mostly all lovely guys. I mean, Michael Jones is an example of that. When my dad turned 60, I was working in radio at the time, so I was lucky enough to be able to, you make contacts, you have a bit of a black book.
Yeah.
Got a hold of Michael, and he, I think, gave my dad a training jacket, because my dad would be like the best player there's ever been, Michael Jones, no question. He signed a birthday card for me, and I gave it to him. Just, lovely people. And I think the pedestal thing, I think there are people who are, when I say worthy of being put on a pedestal, not because they're better than, but for their sporting prowess. Michael Jordan deserves to be considered above everybody else when it comes to basketball. Maybe when it comes to managing money and gambling, not so much. But for basketball, Michael Jones probably for rugby, but also he's done a lot for the community as well.
Well, yeah, that's what really. That's how I like judging the people. Are they still nice people?
Yeah.
And most people who represent New Zealand or get to that level, no matter what sport it is, they're still deep down nice people, and they still have Weet-Bix for breakfast, just like you or I. You know what I mean? And while they've got a skill, and while they're public, public love to own them at times, but you get them on their own, and like the Martin Crowe coming over to you in the gym, just a quiet little, how are you getting on, and what have you been doing lately? It's lovely, isn't it?
What do you think, though, of... that's in a private moment that no one sees. The tall poppy thing. I remember Charles Barkley in the NBA, but certainly Shane Warne, to bring it back to cricket, making it very clear that I am not a... what's the word I'm looking for, Jace? Someone to be looked up to. I'm not a role model. I'm not a role model. Don't look at my work outside of off the field. If you want to emulate me for my sporting ability, that's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to be emulated for my social life. What do you think about a high-profile athlete with that sort of perspective?
That's fine, Shane. You can do that, but you'll never get a Queen's Service medal from Warren Lees, will you?
Okay.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I think,
and he may have changed his opinion now, 20 years later, right?
Well, he does seem a bit different now. That's right. But and you can be. It's a funny thing about the best, to be the best, because I've thought about this for a long time about world cricketers.
Yeah.
Most of the very best players in the world were, you could find selfishness right at the top of the descriptions for them, all right? The only way to get to the top was to actually drive yourself.
Yeah, right.
And I know by playing well, you're helping your team.
Yeah.
But it's a funny thing that cricket's slightly different to a lot of other sports in that individually you can just play for yourself, but by playing for yourself, normally you're helping a team an awful lot. I know one-day cricket and the opening batsman from the 5-day game doesn't suit the one-day game. But
when you use the word selfishness, you're actually meaning they're being selfish, but you're actually using that as they are. It's not that they're an implied selfishness; they are being selfish.
Oh yeah,
it's like a determination and a drive.
Yes,
to succeed for themselves.
Yeah, the drive is, that's right. The drive it's almost when they lift their cricket coffin, as we used to call them, a terrible thing. In the inside of the top lid, as you lift it up, as you're sitting there, people used to have little sayings,
I thought you were going to say they had their stats, which would be a similar sort of thing.
Similar sort of thing. Yeah. Some people were very much that way, but they would have things about look after your own standards when the rest of the team is falling down.
Right.
Well, things like that. So I never had that in mind.
Can I just suggest that maybe that message is not getting through the current cricketers? Maybe. Other than Kane Williamson, who I want to talk about as well shortly. But I remember when I was working for ZB, Murray Deaker was still working there, and probably 2 years before Kane Williamson came onto the national stage, he was saying there's a boy out there and he's going to be the best batsman we've ever had in this country. And he was talking about Kane, and he basically talked about because of his precision, his ability and stuff. What do you think? Is he fulfilling that prophecy that Deeks put out there?
First of all, I'm pleased you mentioned Murray Deaker because I was in Melbourne for the test, Boxing Day test, and one of the best hours I've spent with anyone, him and I sat out on the lawn not watching the cricket for an hour.
All right.
By God, he knows a lot about sport.
Yeah.
He does, and he knows a lot about life.
Yep.
And I've mentioned this to other people, how I saw Murray, I sat down and we had a damn good chat. What a good time it was. But getting on to the Kane Williamson thing, yeah, he's special, isn't he?
But will he, at the end of his career, will he be clearly the best ever New Zealand's produced?
I don't know that he's particularly self-driven. I see him as a really nice, gentle, follow me type captain, but do it the quiet way.
Steady the ship, that's his nickname.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the sort of thing that he's just one of those guys, and I've said this before, and I've got a lovely son-in-law, by the way, so I'm not criticising my son-in-law James, but he's the sort of person you would love to have as your son-in-law. He's just a nice guy.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of players around in this current New Zealand team who are very nice people, nicer publicly than perhaps the team of, say, 7 years ago.
Interesting. Do you think we're missing a bit of that mongrel? Do we need, because if Kane Williamson is going to be the nice guy, do we need to have I was going to say David Boone. Do we need to have what was the bowler from Australia? Big belly, big moustache, handlebars moustache. Merv Hughes, the guy that would smack does there need to be? No. Do we not have a bit of mongrel at the moment? Is that a necessity part? Is that a necessary part of every team to have a bit of mongrel?
Yeah, the mongrel doesn't have to be seen publicly,
right?
But the mongrel has to be from within,
right?
And strangely enough, I think Ross Taylor has a wee bit of it at times.
Really,
from it's been forced on him, and I think he has a determination to prove people wrong. And I think from what happened to him way back, the captaincy issues and things like that, which was very, very poorly handled by New Zealand cricket. But I think that gave him a bit of a drive. The close relationship he had with Martin Crowe.
Yeah, I was wondering as well about...
There was a lesson to be learned because Martin Crowe had a certain drive about the way he played his game as well. And I think that you could call that mongrel inside. It's not quite that. It's probably not quite the right word for some players.
More drive than mongrel?
More drive, yeah. And I think we miss that in the current team because we've got such a wide variety of experiences.
Yeah.
So we've got some young whippersnappers, if that's the word. I'm not going to use the names, but you know what I mean. They've arrived on the scene, and here I am. And I was told when I was 14, I was at Auckland Grammar, that I was probably going to play for New Zealand. I finally did, and I'm now 21, and here I am.
Yeah.
So you get those players. You've got the more experienced players who have done reasonably well, but haven't quite lived up to their reputation completely. So those guys are a wee bit stressed because I haven't quite shown what I did 2 years ago, or even at the under-19 level when I got singled out because I did well at the World Cup. I haven't gone further.
Yeah.
And we just had an opening batsman who's not with the team at the moment, but he did well a couple of years ago, but struggling. We've also got the players who are just still at their level and we can't understand them. And De Grantom, I'm not going to mention names. And here we go, De Grantom. But we can't really understand where he is
because he can look like the best player in the world on one day. Yeah. This seems to be a New Zealand cricket trait. I've often talked about New Zealand cricket like an abusive relationship because I'm like I haven't watched the last couple of 2020s. I've flicked, but. You know, that stretch we had where they were going really well, I fall in love with them again. Not just because they're winning, because it's beautiful to watch. They're having fun. It's a good time. And then all of a sudden they start beating me over the head. Like that trip to Australia was just heartbreaking, you know. And I do feel for them a little bit because we were supposedly the number 2 test team in the world, but I strongly believe there should always be an asterisk beside that because Australia were depleted from some bannings, so it wasn't necessarily a true ranking, and I think that was what got shown up.
Oh, quite often the public don't understand. I mean, we once went to Australia, 1980 or 81, and we had those tri-series, India and Australia and us, and the next year England, Australia and us. And we played bloody well. We really did, way above ourselves. I mean, well, put it this way, Richard and one or two others played really well, and we had to have 11
for the ride.
We had to have 11 people on the field. But when we got back to New Zealand, we were sort of like heroes, you know, the underarm, and because that played into our hands a wee bit.
Well, did you play in that game? Was that you?
No, I wasn't playing in that game.
Oh,
no,
right.
but I was there on that tour.
Okay.
But anyway, we came back from that tour as national heroes because of the Underarm. But strangely enough,
was he
they
facing?
only had half a team. We only a couple of times we beat Australia in those one-day games, but Packer had taken. We actually played against Australia C, but the public didn't understand that. And the same thing can happen, with teams now. I mean, the Australian team doesn't always have its top team. India has just lost a couple of players. They're going to go home, and we're probably going to do well. And we're going to forget the fact that their best players aren't there. But the New Zealand team have got those youngsters. They've got the players who haven't quite made it. They've got the players who can't understand because of the selection problems. They don't know whether they're batting at 4 or they're batting at 6, or am I going to bowl into the wind, or am I going to bowl at all? Well, that's the Grand Tom. And then you've got the other players at the top, some of them being injured, and I think the New Zealand team, I'll make this point, I think we lose a hell of a lot at practice, in the dressing room, and on the field when Trent Bolt's not there.
I was thinking that through the series. Where is he injured at the moment, or
Yes,
is he just not?
He's coming back. He's coming back.
So he's injured. That they would be selecting him for the T20s.
Yeah, he's been injured, and I think it just shows you
Bolt
how
and Southey are world class together. Southey by himself with anyone else seems to be
looks
down
a bit of a
step.
loner.
Yeah,
that's right. He does too.
because the way those two bowl in tandem seems to complement one another against batsmen.
But I think also the Bolt Southey thing helps the Taylor Williamson thing at the top of the team, you know, because people are. I mean, Brendan McCullum made comments as well about the Williamson thing. Is he still got the urge to captain New Zealand? Well, I don't know whether we should say that, but I think he probably has. But when the captain's left alone, and I don't think Taylor has an awful lot to do with things on the field. He doesn't appear to be particularly vocal on the field. Well, the captain can be exposed.
Yeah.
But if you've got 3 senior players with you and you're working as a little senior team, as a group, it's the same with Tom Latham. I think he doesn't play this version of the game, but when he's there, he's a senior player now, so it's another voice, you see. So you find that Williamson probably captains better when everyone's there. It doesn't mean to say their performance overall is going to be good, but I think he feels more comfortable when he's got his mates around him.
It's a bit like kind of running a company with a board rather than just a CEO doing everything. Because I think about the seniors, I think about in those teams, I'm like Southey, Williamson, Taylor, and they're often the one, or mind you, Taylor's normally in the slips, but you often see Southey and Williamson chatting together about obviously tactics and bowling and field position and that kind of stuff. Yeah,
well, it took a long time for some of those players to learn to do that because they possibly no one comes into the team as a senior player, so it takes quite a bit of your own performance and your longevity in the team means you become a senior player. But they've got a good senior group if they're all available, and that makes it easier for the young guys as well. Whereas you do notice sometimes, and I watch on TV and I think, why is he saying? You can see the young guys having ideas on the field, and a lot of people say that's really good. I still like you serve your apprenticeship sort of thing.
So do you mean young fella shut up and do what you're told?
Yeah,
almost?
well, sort of. I mean, if a bowler's gone for I don't know a couple of 4s and a 2 off the first 3 balls of an over, most of these bowlers have got an idea that things aren't going that well. You don't need someone calling out from mid-wicket or waving his arms from some. I like the younger players still serving their time. Yeah, and
it's like they don't get to sit in the back of the bus until they've reached a very
well, you're not
certain
those
level.
days are gone, thank God. But things like and I don't know why I think this way. I think the best players are the ones who fail for a while.
Right.
Come into the team, you score your 70, blast 70, and you get in the media for a day, get 24 next innings, have your team win, you feel part of it. It's actually quite good. Some of the guys who last the longest in sport have actually been dropped after a certain time, and they've realised what they missed. Right, and they've had to readjust, come back better than ever. Go away, work hard. And that's why an injury sometimes is quite good for players. Right. Because it lets them realise that, now I understand why the other guy who was injured, I never thought about him again. But you get injured yourself and find that you miss out on a tour or you miss out on some games and you realise what you're missing and what you love the most. That's why you play the game. You love the game. You want to be out there playing. And that's why I think it's quite good for some players to fail 2 or 3 times and then get left out. Because when they come back the next time, they cherish it a bit more, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. Look, I'm really interested to hear, just because it's such an iconic piece of New Zealand history, you were in the squad for the underarm game, but not on the field. Is that what you're saying? You were on that tour?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about, like, obviously, now it was McKechnie who was batting?
Brian McKechnie was facing.
Oh, look, here we go. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at
a young Trevor Chappell.
And Chappell was
the
bowling.
youngest of the 3.
But he's not the captain, eh? His brother was the captain?
Yes. Greg was the captain.
Yeah.
Ian had retired.
Yep. So when are we? What year are we? 83, 84?
Yeah.
Is that what this year is about? 83?
Before that, 81.
Or was it that? I don't know.
Brian McKechnie, who hadn't hit a 6 in club cricket for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And
even the crowd. So this is at which is it SCG? Which
Melbourne.
Okay, MCG.
Yeah. Bruce Edgar. Carried his bat right through the innings. Obviously,
I heard a story about Bruce Edgar that his hand, he didn't quite have his hands right on his bat.
John Wright.
Oh, was that right? And they stuck his glove to his
and then
thing.
Stephen Bock did the same thing.
And then he knew he'd have a good innings when he came in with a swollen ankle or something because he was staying nice and close to his pad. Anyway, I really want to know, because obviously these guys came off the field and you would have been in the changing rooms, yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me what's happening. Tell me the feeling. Tell me the vibe. Tell me the words.
Right. I think we had to score something like 5 runs to win the game. So McKechnie had to hit a 6. So and Greg Chappell was under terrible pressure in those days in Australia. To be the Australian captain must have been the best thing, proud, but also the worst thing. They're at you the whole time. He was tired. He wasn't that well. They desperately needed to win the game. They'd lost a close game earlier on.
Yeah.
So he said, bowl underarm. Brian McKechnie said, there he is, saying, what do you mean bowl underarm? What are you talking about? That can't be right. Rod Marsh saying, no, don't do it.
He was not, because that's the thing.
Don't do it.
Part if not most of the Australian team was like, nah, this is not literally this is not cricket.
Yeah, and Trevor Chappell saying, I'm lucky to be in this team, because he was lucky to be in the team. He wasn't a certainty. He didn't have a long career. We didn't have a long one after this. And thinking, how am I going to do this? So he bowls underarm. McKechnie rightly just blocks it. I mean, people dream up things. He could have flicked it up off his foot and hit it for 6. Colty couldn't hit the ball to the boundary on the best of days. So it was quite a good response from Colty. It was just throw the ball away, meaning I'm disgusted, we'll walk off. Bruce Edgar, had as I said, he'd opened the innings, so he'd batted right through.
He got a ton, 102 or something, did I say?
Yeah, and that was basically the end. You'll see, I think Jeff Howarth rightly goes onto the field to, remonstrate with the umpires, which is too late. I mean, hold on, this is where they stop and say, hold on, we might.
And that's Marshy saying, sorry boys, that was not cricket.
Jeff Howarth saying, what on earth, we've never heard of this in our lives. And the umpire quite rightly saying, it's in the rules.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone now can say, well, that's ridiculous. But the ridiculous things have happened in sport, and they learn from ridiculous things, and that's why they change the rules.
Well, it's a bit like, I mean, it's not that it's necessarily the same kind of sportsmanship, but there was a while that in Australia did it as well. John Eales at the rugby, they'd lift him in front of the goalposts to try and catch.
Yes, they did.
And then, because it was in the rules, and then the next year, it wasn't allowed because they changed the rules.
Or the netball girls who lifted to put the ball in the hoop. That's right. Anyway, that was the New Zealand team. And what happened in the dressing room was quite interesting, because it was like, you could see there, the players were stunned, the Australian fielders were stunned, and 2 batsmen out there were stunned, and the 2 umpires probably didn't show it, but they thought, what the hell's going on? But in the dressing room, I remember people in the dressing room are having a cup of tea, watching the end of the game. They've had their bat. I mean, it was a gentleman's game still. Yeah. Well, the cup hit the wall, the concrete wall, and it just absolutely shattered, and pieces of crockery flew all over the room. Guys, the language was just out of control, and it was like we were, when I say stunned, but we're also angry immediately. And it seemed like such a big thing. It was, we cannot believe it, that dirty bug. You know, the words were worse than that. Someone came in from Australian cricket to apologise. This is perhaps 10 minutes after the game.
Like management level sort of thing?
Yeah, like the chairman. God only knows what his name was. But and there were things like, go away, you're just like it. Worse words. And it was funny because I can think back now, and I think it was all sort of over in half an hour, really.
Right.
It became a huge thing back here. Mr. Muldoon's talking about they're aptly dressed in yellow and all this carry on. And then when we got home, we were heroes because they cheated. They cheated against us. When you think about it, as I said before, Goldie was never going to hit it for six. Even if he'd bowled a normal ball, he was never going to hit it for six. It's a bloody big boundary in Melbourne, so it was so unlikely you could ever hit that ball for six. It's funny how the country got onto it because the country supports, always do, underdogs, don't they?
Yeah.
We were talking about that before.
Yeah.
Because the Auckland Rugby, that's the thing. We support anyone down.
Anyone playing Auckland.
Yeah. Because we're actually most of them are always underdogs, unless it's Canterbury. And the country got right in behind it. The players had lost it completely. It had gone from our minds. It wasn't a big thing.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, it was like, apart from being patted on the back when you came in through the airport, our heroes. We lost, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But our heroes.
And you lost with the team you were opposing technically playing within the rules.
Yeah. It wasn't as big a thing in the players' minds until, of course, when you get home to your hometown and people would say, "Oh, you poor bug, they cheated against you." You somehow, it built you back up again.
Yeah.
It gave you attention. Well, that's what it really was. And when you're a young sports person, in most cases you like the attention. I mean, when you're playing the game, it's a funny thing. You don't like to admit it at the time, but when you're retired, you have time to reflect on these things. I think we all liked a wee bit of attention. We like to go to the supermarket and from the aisle, "Do you think that's Warren Lee's over there?" "I think it is, Mum."
Kids, can I have an autograph? That sort of thing.
And you might make out when you get home, "Oh God, I'm not going back to the supermarket, dude," because there's always someone.
But then you go, "Oh, I forgot the butter. I better shit back down again."
And sometimes when you're that age, you're almost disappointed if you go to the pub or the supermarket or the movies and no one recognises you. You think, "What the hell, have they forgotten me?" That's a bit
so
of a
the
smart.
underarm kind of gave you guys raised the profile
It
even
sort of
more
did.
so.
Yeah, it did.
What about like you said you guys kind of forgot it, but what about the next time you played Australia? Was there a little something more there, or was literally completely gone?
No, I think it was gone. I think when, as we mentioned before, when Southland played Auckland or Otago played Auckland at rugby, one team was the little brother and one was the rich big brother, right? The older brother. And whenever we played Australia, even if we'd beaten them the day before, I think we were still the little brother.
That's probably a part of the reason it resonated so much, because not only did we have a chance technically of beating the big brother, they then played dirty within the rules. Like, it makes me think you get, you can have a ruling in cricket now which is bringing the game into disrepute, even something that's within the rules. Did anything like that happen to Australia? Did they actually get any kind of slap on the wrist? Because whilst it was within the rules, it was pretty pretty ugly.
Yeah, I think the Australian public, cricket public in general, really disliked what they saw. There were the occasional people, ha, that was good. Of course, you'd always get that. There were a few of them, and the pubs would say that. But I think it had a telling blow on the Chappell family. I'm pretty sure of that. I mean, Trevor Chappell, they still mix. Brian McKechnie and Trevor Chappell still mix. Wouldn't they be great to have them both in the same place at a function and have them speaking? So you can see how it made something for Brian McKechnie over the years, I guess, and even Bruce Edgar, who was batting with them. I certainly made the most of it when I was talking at the local Lions Club or something. I mean, it gave me something to fill in 5 minutes. And then people in the audience, did they really? Things like that. They go, "Oh, we didn't know who threw that cup you were talking about." Things like that. It's sometimes you sort of wonder whether you can cover things up from the public. So we sort of let it on a wee bit. I mean, the interview when
you played up to it a bit.
Yeah, a little bit like that. So when you get back and someone wants to interview you, and they talk about that. Of course, you wanted them to say, "What about the underarm?" Because that made it.
So what you're saying is, I have fallen into your well-timed trap by asking you about it.
A little bit. It doesn't matter.
The thing is with it is it's such an infamous story. It is part of folklore now because I played cricket as a youngster, and even playing a bit of BYC, with your mates.
People say it.
No matter what, every game there'll be at least somebody say, "Oh, don't be an Aussie now, Aussie bowler."
Yesterday,
something about that.
Yesterday here in Dunedin, Masters Games. Yep. Right? Yesterday here in Dunedin, I went out to the St Kilda Bowling Club to present some medals and make a wee bit of a talk about the Masters Games and how wonderful it is. And I said, "Is there anyone here, by the way, from Australia?" And I wasn't thinking about the underarm. And so, a few hands up. I said, well, we're not going to talk about cricket, knowing the way we're playing at the moment, and we've just been beaten in Australia. And it was just a wee comment. And a guy stood up with a $2 coin and rolled it underarm to me. Well, of course, I picked it up and put it in my pocket and said, I'm not giving it back. But the underarm is just famous. And the other thing that a lot of people forget, Brian McKechnie was the lead person in the underarm as far as New Zealand goes.
Yeah.
He was the guy that kicked the goal in England. It might have been in Wales, I think. I'm not sure. When Andy Hayden jumped out of the line out.
Yeah.
And I mean, two of the things.
Good for the goose.
Oh yeah, but amazing thing that Brian McKechnie was the person there both times, and yet he was a very, very unassuming rugby player, and he was a one-day player specialist in cricket.
Yep.
Never really a lead player at either sport, but he was there on those two occasions.
Hilarious. It is folklore, as Jay said, as well.
Yeah.
The current squad, what are your thoughts? I mean, one of the things that excited about you coming in was you have the experience of being there as a player and also as a coach.
Yeah.
So, and I'm interested that it seems like you kind of do a little bit here and there these days, live in Central Otago, help out sort of the local kids is what I'm reading, do a little bit of here and there, but you're not really that much involved in cricket now as you were, which surprises me because, you're still a young man comparatively, but you could still be doing. I mean, you could still be coaching to an elite level. You could still be involved in, developing, those under-19s we've just been talking about. Why do you choose to kind of, chill up in Central, helping the young fellas rather than heading off to London with the under-19s or coming into Dunedin and coaching, Otago or those sorts of things?
I'll try and keep this short for you, but when I finished playing with New Zealand, and how do I put it? I jumped about half an hour before I was pushed, I think.
Oh, okay.
So I had a bad knee, and I had and Ian Smith was playing better than me, and we'd been to England, and it was like, I can't play anymore anyway, and I'm not going to get another tour. I can't squeeze any more out of this, so I got out. Played another couple of years for Otago until it got to the stage where my knee was... In fact, we kept a whole day in Wellington without pads because I just could not crouch down.
Wow.
I mean, so I gave it up, and then ended up only 2 years later watching the Warriors at home on TV one Sunday afternoon when they rang up and said, "Would you like to coach New Zealand?" And I
that's an interesting phone call.
And it was an interesting phone call.
Did the crockery get thrown against the wall of that one as well? What the hell?
But it was one of those things, and I sort of asked, why do you want me? And typical of New Zealand cricket, they said, don't worry, you're not the first person we asked. Quite a few have turned us down. So I did that for 3 seasons, and I was so lucky, I really was, to have Martin Crowe. I mean, I just used to pinch myself that here am I, average cricketer at an international level, below average probably, but now coaching the New Zealand team and having Martin Crowe as my captain, because I just was astounded. I just couldn't believe. I said to him, I don't know how long I'm going to have this job, and I don't know how long you're going to be captain, but when we're together, we'll meet at 6:30 in my room every morning. And for 3 seasons, he never missed a meeting.
Wow.
He was on time, and he was there at every single meeting. And no one else knew we had these meetings.
Okay.
Not even the players knew that we had these meetings. But it was my way of saying to Martin, you need to direct me.
Right.
But I didn't say those words.
Yeah.
And therefore I became pretty close to Martin in that time and understood things pretty well. Obviously, we had the World Cup and
92?
92 and Hogan scored the runs.
One of the irony about the 92 World Cup is I remember being in Eden Park watching when we were playing Australia, and their run rate kept going up and up and up and up, and the crowd chant was, look at the scoreboard, look at the scoreboard. But I remember we lost to someone, it might have been to Pakistan, and that knocked Australia out in the 92. And I remember one of the Australian players going, well, they've got us back for the underarm then. Like, they can't complain anymore, basically saying New Zealand threw that game to knock us out.
Yeah. It was an interesting time in the World Cup.
Any truth to that? Any truth to that?
No, I tell you what, New Zealand, no, there was no gambling on the game or anything. No. We were lucky at the World Cup. I mean, we went through a fantastic stage.
Paddy Greatbatch made himself
unbelievable
a household name forevermore.
Running down the wicket at the fast bowlers, and even opening in the one day games, which he didn't expect. It was a great team to coach because we had a good mixture. We had the young Chris Cairns, the young Chris Harris. We had some average cricketers who were squeezing the best out of themselves.
Good.
They probably don't mind me saying this, but Willie Watson and Gavin Larson, Rod Latham, Deepak Patel.
Well, I was going to ask you about Rangi because who decided, because Rangi was opening, Deepak was opening at times, wasn't he? Opening the bowling.
He opened in the first game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that to me, from my knowledge, was like a world first, because the commentators the world over was going, what the crap is happening here? Why haven't they got their fastest bowlers out there? And that's now something you see echoed, especially in T20, the world over. Tell me about using spin to open for that World Cup, because as I say, I think that's probably either you or Martin, or you and Martin together, or someone started a new way of doing cricket.
Yeah, we did, and you can look back on one day cricket around the world, and 2 years after that, the Sri Lankans came out with some opening batsmen who had never been seen before, and they changed world cricketers the way they wanted to bat. You see what I mean? And Sri Lanka went from about the sixth team in the world to the second team very quickly. We discussed it 2 or 3 days before the game, and Ross Dykes was involved as well, Martin Crowe, myself, and we were never going to beat Australia when we matched their number one with our number one, their number 7 with our number 7, their fast. We were losing. Most of the way down. They were going to, 8 of their players were A players, and only 3 of our players made the team, if you understand what I mean. So we had to match them up, and we were thinking, therefore you've got to look at your tactics. And there were a lot of different ways of doing it, but we wanted to do something that was going to stamp a style on our. We didn't know we were going to win, but. And it was quite a strange thing, because we didn't all agree for a start. And to be fair, I've always believed in this. When you're on a committee, when the decision's made, you never ever talk about individuals of a committee.
Right.
Because your job is to be a team together, 3 people.
So you never say party A thinks this, party B thinks that. So I'm not going to tell you now,
and neither would I ever, about who was for it, who was against it. But the 3 of us got together, and it took some debate.
Yep.
But it also took a little bit of desperation. And it was almost like saying, we're going to lose. And then it was, no, we don't want to lose. How can we win? How can we drag it out? Or how can we win and set something up for what was going to be a big crowd at Eden Park? We knew that. We knew it was going to be a big crowd. So there was a bit of hype about it. And I don't even know whether Deepak was 100% behind it. But he was possibly the same sort of mind, thinking, I'm not even certain I'm going to get in this team.
Right.
I'm only just on the edges of this team, that sort of.
So he'll be saying, "I'll take whatever you give me,
that's
coach.
Right.
I'll do anything.
I'll do anything. I'll bowl left arm if you want me to." That's not quite, but it was a move that I'll tell you a wee story about it. Ian Galloway, famous, probably our most famous ever commentator, came from Dunedin, still lives in Dunedin, and I rang him in the morning. And I possibly shouldn't have done this. I was probably being a wee bit cheeky, but I said, I've got something for you.
Right, bit of goss, a leak.
It's a leak.
Right.
And Ian, I owe you this for being loyal to me over the years and being a family friend and entertaining the Otago cricket team at your house. And yes, Warren, what would it be? There's the way he spoke, No, he was Mr. Galloway to me all his life and still is. So I told him that Deepak Patel was going to open the bowling, and he said, well, thank you.
That was it.
But do you know, I could never use it. He was so, honestly, he was so traditional and honest and straight. He said, I could never use that. even though you've told me something, and I know that I could be the first in the world to break this news in the forerunner before the game and say, I've got an idea, I could just put it there.
I've heard from sources within the team.
Yeah, and he said I could never use it, but thank you for giving me that information. I've always thought.
Have you ever asked him why?
No, I believed in what he said then. No, I'll commentate the game the way I see it. I'll give my own personal ideas, and so far it's got me through the last 30 years of commentary. It'll continue. I always admired the man for that,
right.
And I probably was a little bit disappointed in myself for doing it. Later on, I learned lessons from it too. But anyway, that was the World Cup, and the World Cup was an exciting time.
And so the three of you, the committee got together and decided this. It worked. In the tournament, do you see anyone else mimicking you, or did that? Because, like I said, that's changed cricket, like to this day, especially 2020. Did anyone else mimic you? Did anyone else think, well, this is a bit new, we'll try this as well? Or was it just the Kiwis? It was the young guns then, wasn't it? It wasn't the black cap, it was the young guns.
The young guns. I was part of the young guns. Can you imagine how embarrassing that was?
And the reception was genius stroke, or was the reception, holy crap, what are they doing?
No,
I mean, it worked. So
no, you're right. Initially, it was holy crap. What are they doing?
Yeah.
When Dipak's marking out his run up, and after 2 or 3 overs, wow, but it was born out of desperation. And quite often good ideas can come out of desperation, but you've just got to make sure your teams. Now that was a very, very easy team to coach, because the youngsters were just so honest and enthusiastic, and it was almost like follow us.
Yeah,
even if we go down a dead end street, we'll all turn around and come back out together. We won't make comment. We'll just follow. It was a bloody good team. I mean, not great players, but we were all mates. It was like we did some funny things together, and I always used to think, if I asked that team to go down the harbour and jump off the wharf, fully clothed, and then get out, I reckon they'd have done it. And I mean, not because they respected me. That was that sort of group we had. Every night we used to play stupid Auckland games, spoofing with 3 coins, 2 coins, or 1 coin, and we used to go to the bar and have a couple of drinks and it was just so much fun. And Ian Smith was the spoofing champion. I used to think, how does he do it every day? How does he win every night? But it was a good fun. Oh, of course, it's more fun when you win.
Yeah, of course. And
there were some players in that team who had never had this before. Getting off the plane in Napier, I remember standing back, and there weren't that many in the airport, but they stood and they clapped for the New Zealand team.
Yeah.
And then people like Murphy Sewer, they were hitting him on the back and asking for autographs. And these guys would go, oh, I've never had this before. It was sort of something like, it was quite surreal, really, because you couldn't dream about that sort of thing happening, because it was only 2 weeks before. We were nothing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, just for a brief time, we were something. And you look back and think, okay, we lost the semi-final, and Inzaman al-Haq and Java Miandad scored some runs, and Martin Crowe
big names there.
Yeah, Martin Crowe was injured and couldn't field, and we didn't have a captain. Righty was captain. So we got mixed messages. And yet when Martin had been on the field in all those other games, when the captain said, well, not jump, but what I mean.
How high, yeah.
They were 100% behind him. So that was a good experience.
So as someone who has been the New Zealand cricket captain,
do
you have an opinion?
Coach.
Coach.
But I felt like I was captain sometimes. Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on why the New Zealand cricket team never seems to have done that last hurdle? Like, to me, one of the things that I was pretty devastated about the Boxing Day Test match, whilst I knew we were underdogs and all that, but it was just the performance wasn't even, it was there, and like, Brendan McCullum's Black Caps making it to the final of the Cricket World Cup, and there just seems to be something within New Zealand cricket, and maybe it's just circumstance and maybe it'll change, but that last hurdle, we just never seem to make that last hurdle.
Life is like that.
Yeah.
And I mentioned before that when Otago played Auckland, or when Warren Lees played for New Zealand, Otago weren't quite ready to play Auckland because it was a life change. It was getting on the plane and staying in a really smart hotel, which we didn't have in Dunedin.
Right.
So therefore, immediately you felt a little bit uncomfortable. And the Auckland players, as I said, arriving in their convertible cars, blonde wife, cravat, new Old Spice sponsorship.
Cravat, because they'd come straight from the 1960s. High 1960s, they call it.
It just used to amaze me. But you could see the faces of the Otago. Or Warren Lee's going to play in a test match.
Yeah.
So thrilled when the team came out. The day of the game, I was pooing my pants. I hadn't slept the night before. I get on the plane. It's a big 6-seater. I hadn't been on a plane that had 6 seats across it before.
Right.
And I'm sweating. And I'm thinking I'm going to pass out on the flight. I'm only going to practice. and the same thing happened, you say, about the New Zealand team not getting across the line sometimes.
Just that last hump.
Right, so Warren Lee's playing for New Zealand, Otago playing Auckland. Now, you think about it, New Zealand playing the West Indies.
Yep, especially in the 80s.
Exactly the same feeling.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, Joel Garner, Andy
Big Bird.
Roberts, all these guys, Colin Croft going to run into the umpire, different things. But quite often, the New Zealand team actually lost confidence because of what they were going to encounter.
Right.
And
so it's a confidence thing.
oh yeah, we learnt in the years I was playing, and it wasn't me, don't worry, I wasn't good enough, but we learnt to almost bully Sri Lanka, a new team, into international cricket. All right?
Not anymore.
No, but we did.
Yeah.
We played very, very well against Australia C, as I told you before.
Yeah.
We occasionally played very well against India, who could not travel away from home. They were poor travellers. So when they came to New Zealand...
They like their own pitches, eh?
And they like their own food. They like their own customs, all those sort of things. So we could play well against certain teams. But on the big stage, we were always going to struggle, and we always will. Numbers-wise, we'll always struggle, but we're always going to struggle. We had to bring our A team. Everyone in the 11 had to bring their A game playing against Australia. We had Richard Hadley, we had Glenn Turner, we had Martin Crowe. Now, I don't think in 20 years' time we'll be able to remember who else we had, because we didn't.
Jeremy Coney.
We didn't quite have enough. When I was coaching, I always used to talk to Martin about the number of our players who are internationally respected by every opposition.
Yeah.
Because that tells you how good your team's going to be. We only had 2 or 3 who were internationally respected by all the opposition, meaning he's a good player. If they were discussing the New Zealand team, and it was England, say, and I'd sit down sometimes with Hogan, I'll say, how many players will England really be looking at? And he would say, 4 or 5.
That hasn't actually changed, because I'm thinking about this. I mean, you'd probably put Trent Boult in there when he's healthy, but certainly Taylor and Williamson.
Yes, their record speaks for itself. That's right. Yeah.
And who else?
What do you see?
Would Southey be I'm talking about by the world cricket? Would he be considered that or not?
I don't think they'd worry about him. I mean,
but Trent Boult? Worry about Trent Boult?
Yes, they would. Yeah.
So these are 3. Yeah. So what I hear you saying, and forgive me for paraphrasing, is we don't have the skills. Like when we've got our 3 world class against every other team, these big teams with their 6 world class, that's the reason we're not getting over the hump.
Well, but we haven't experienced. To get in the New Zealand team, you've probably got to score, say, 5 centuries within New Zealand first.
Yep.
In Australia, how many do you have to score?
Yeah, like 10 or 20.
Oh, yeah, 20. 20. Right. So you're our first class cricket, and even the players who play first class cricket admit this. Even though New Zealand cricket doesn't like to say anyone to say, it's not strong. It is not strong, and we've got too many players who have been selected for New Zealand having scored 4 first class centuries or 1 5-wicket bag in a.
I mean, Raval's one of those players, isn't he?
Exactly.
Because I mean, when he first started on the international scene, it was like, this could be something,
exactly.
And then it seems to have not been.
Well,
I mean, still to come, hopefully, long career, but at the moment,
Rutherford, Hamish Rutherford, started off, heap of runs, but they sort them out, don't they? They sort out.
Once the opposition team knows that they don't like it on their toes on leg stump or whatever.
Exactly, it takes a little while for the opposition teams. But when one opposition team learns how to bolt here, you can guarantee the other teams know as well.
I wonder at this last point about the over the hurdle thing, and then we go. I know we're going to have to wrap up shortly, Ish, because you've got other things to do. But let's forget about the last Rugby World Cup. But the one before, I was talking to Martin Devlin. I was actually talking to him as a talkback caller on his radio show. And he was talking about, I'm so nervous about this game against Australia, the final. And I phoned up and I said, look, if we play to the best we can and Australia plays
just slightly
badly, they lose. If we play the best we can and Australia plays as best they can, we win. Yeah. If we play averagely and Australia plays as best they can, we probably still win, but it'll be close. We have to play really poorly, and Australia has to play the best they can for them to win. I think what I hear you saying on some level is in the cricket scenario, we're Australia in the rugby scenario.
Yeah,
we have to play as best we can, and probably for that final hump, we're talking the final of the Cricket World Cup, probably the other team has to play an average to bad game.
So what I'm also trying to say is you don't have to worry about your Williamson and your Taylor and your Bolt.
Yep.
Because they're your best players, and they are day in, day out, they're probably going to give you good performances.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You don't have to worry about your youngsters, your two youngsters in the team, whether they be a spin bowler or a medium pace or whatever. You don't worry about them because they're learning their trade.
Yep.
You do have to worry
So
about...
is that 3 or 4 in the middle?
Your players in the middle...
The Gronholms we're talking about.
Who haven't quite given you consistent performances.
Yep.
Once they give consistent performances, it lifts the whole team.
So is that a head thing more primarily or a skill thing?
Well, I think it's a head thing for the individual,
Yeah.
right? But I also think it's got something to do with the administration of the team.
Right.
Because they're the players who in their own minds think, I'm not quite up to it. Now, no matter what team you've got going on the park, the coach can easily go to that team and say, I don't care what you think individually, I'm the coach of the team and I'm also a selector. I can guarantee that the three of us believe you are the best number 4 in the country or best left arm spinner or whatever. You are the best.
Yeah.
So get that idea of I'm going to get dropped out of your mind. Get the idea of I'm not up to it out of your mind because we believe you are the best. There is no one else. Now, your whole team has to think that way. I couldn't do it as a player. I could not. I could not convince myself that I could go and face Dennis Lilly. I could not.
Wow.
And all
good.
But all
Dennis Lilly.
you know, before you start a rugby game, it's the old rah rah, hit the first ruck. And if there's 3 of the forwards not believing that, you don't hit the first ruck. They push you back. And if in a cricket game, if you've got your number 5 and 6 and your third seamer and your part-time spinner all thinking they can't do it, don't worry about it. You won't do it. Because you can't rely, those top 3 players I mentioned don't win you the games. One thing I do want to mention, I know we're going to finish, but I loved coaching more than playing. Absolutely. Wow. I thought playing was all you could do in cricket. I was such a proud little fella in South Dunedin when I first got picked to go to Pakistan. I thought, this is it. So I had my time. Then when they asked me to coach, I just could not believe the thrill you get out of coaching and helping someone else. And when I finished with didn't mean to finish, they finished with me. I had the opportunity of carry on coaching, so I coached the women in Dunedin.
Right.
And a lot of people rang me up and said, why are you doing that? Well, why not?
Yeah.
All the time I played, I felt guilty that we stayed in hotels and they couldn't even get an Otago women's cricket team sometimes. I felt guilty. I didn't do anything about it. I was selfish, probably young and just looking after me. So the opportunity came up to coach the women. It was better, seriously, than some of the other coaching I'd done. And you wouldn't believe how lucky someone could be in life. When I coached the men, I coached Martin Crowe, who the players voted as the best player, briefly, at that World Cup. Best player in the world, best batsman in the world at that World Cup. And then I went to coach the Otago women's team. I came across Susie Bates again, who I'd coached as a youngster.
Yeah.
And then I got the New Zealand women's team to take to the World Cup. Now, to coach both national teams and also to have the best men's player and the best women's player and me to have some involvement is like, that is just, you could not dream of ever having that, being so lucky. So for all the ups and downs and goods and bads, I just think that was just an amazing, I was just fortunate, it was just a coincidence, but to have those 2 players, and they taught me more than I ever taught them.
Yeah. Just thinking about that belief thing you were talking about to do with the players, I heard a conversation with Brendan McCullum in the last few months. I don't know where I heard it. I saw it or heard it. It was on YouTube or on the news. And that belief idea, and his belief is something like when he was batting, you had to land the ball on a square foot.
Yeah.
And he's like, and if you miss that, I'm putting you over the boundary. That was his batting attitude. So that was the belief thing.
There's a fair bit of South Dunedin about Brendan McCullum, I tell you that. And he did change New Zealand cricket. He did change the culture of the team. And from a bunch of spoilt kids, people may not like me, they became a really... I only meet the team because I go out to do the pitch with Brian Waddle, you know. Do you know that there was a time where they didn't even look at you? They just did their own thing, and they wouldn't even communicate with each other when they were warming up. They never waved to the crowd or anything like that. When Brendan came along, every time you went out, they came over. The players would shake your hand, good to see you, and get on with the game. They'd be talking to the umpires, friendly, you know.
Nice.
They would smile, and they would wave.
A new culture.
Absolutely
It
fantastic.
sounds like a new family culture.
It is. Well, why don't we have it? Why can't we? Because, as I said right at the start, everyone, even at work, you perform better at work if you're comfortable in your environment. So you've got to make them, that's the coach's job, to make the environment comfortable. I guarantee the environment's not particularly comfortable at the moment in the New Zealand men's dressing room.
With those results, I would say that would be a
That's
done deal.
Makes it hard.
Before we take off, I just want to have a quick understanding of, the GOAT, in some people's opinions, Sir Richard Hadlee, because you obviously had an opportunity to be behind the stumps for him.
I roomed with him for a long time in Australia.
There's sometimes, I don't say criticism of him, but there is people who say if you go back and if you have a look at all those wickets he took, umpires, once he got to this level of excellence, umpires were very friendly with him, especially around LBs. How good was he? How good was he, because like when Sir Donald Bradman died, he didn't name Hadlee in his 11. Was that the right call? Was that the wrong call in your opinion? Was he one of the greatest of all times, first to 400, etc.?
Yeah, I think he was. And I also think it's funny about Richard, because a lot of people didn't even like the way he became rather statistically minded for a while. I didn't mind that at all. I roomed with him a lot in Australia, and I tell you what, you wouldn't get a nicer guy. You would not. He was fun, and he enjoyed the lighter moments, even on the field. He enjoyed the lighter moments. He was absolutely sensational as a bowler. But he worked on his own game, and he knew his own game. If you went into a dressing room and all the guys had to lift their lids of their cricket bags, right, and there were, say, 12 people in the dressing room, 11 of the bags would be very, very untidy, I promise you. John writes, you wouldn't even know if there was a shirt in there. That's why they call him Shake. He just shakes his gear away. That's the way it's. And some of the gear is all over the place. Richard's bag was prepared. He had spare studs, he had his boots, he had clean laces, his trousers were white and ironed, everything was prepared. He worked so hard at doing all the little things so that the big things would fall into line, you know. And
take care of the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves.
Oh, exactly. And I even now I wonder whether we really fully realise just what he did for New Zealand cricket. It's like Martin Crowe. I mean, too easily we have these people on a pedestal. And we put them there. They didn't climb onto that pedestal on their own. Yeah. We put them up there by saying, we love you, you're such a good player. And as soon as they get up there, the first thing we want to do is cut the bloody legs off the pedestal. So, no, he's a great guy. He really is.
If there was the DRS back in the kind of, through the mid-80s and the early 90s, do you reckon he would have taken more wickets or fewer wickets?
I take your point now. Sorry, I forgot that for a moment about the umpires. If you were an umpire, it's much nicer and you're more likely to give someone 50-50 in their favour if they're nice people.
Right, really?
If the guy has just abused you in the first 3 days of a test match and said you're the worst umpire, 4 eyes, and all these things that used to come out in cricket, sledging was great. But Richard Hadlee never said it. He was professional.
Yeah.
He never made any comments when they said not out, and he sometimes even smiled when they said no ball. And he had a wee chuckle and a wee glint in his eye, and he could communicate without saying words. He could communicate with the umpires at times, not asking them to cheat. He accepted things. If I was an umpire, I would be giving more decisions for that sort of person than for Merv Hughes, who was swearing and cursing and spitting and carrying. I would be, the 50-50s would go against him.
Yeah.
And that's not cheating. That's just the way people are.
Yep.
We get on better with people who smile at us.
Yeah.
We get on better in the morning if someone says, good morning, how are you, I hope you have a good day, than the person who looks away. And that's something I have these boring life things, don't I? But if people don't look you in the eye and say good morning, they're probably going to have a shit day themselves. But, I mean, I'll give you one. I have a lady in the New World, and every morning every time I go to the New World, I say, good morning and how are you? And I'm light and I'm being, a wee bit loud, and she never, ever looks me in the eye.
Oh, really?
And so I go home and I say to my wife, I'm going, do you want something in the new? I'll go in. She goes, no, I'll go in. So I go in again, same lady. I look for the lady to see where she is. Which count is she on? I'm going there again. I'll give this lady another chance. Now, this happened about 7 times. And I got this lady in the end. One day, when she was giving me my receipt, I managed to just hold on to it for long enough and said to her, how's your day going? And she looked me in the eye and she smiled and she said, I'm sorry, I should have answered you the other day as well. If you keep smiling at people, in the end they'll smile back.
When I talk to the phone number for XYZ company, and the telephonist or receptionist opens, or it's a bigger company and it's someone offshore or whatever, they go, XYZ company, and I go, oh, g'day, how you doing today? Every time I'm like, you having a good day? Yeah. And if I hear their name, or it's Simon speaking, I say, hey Simon, how you doing today? Every time, and you always hear them kind of go, I'm all right. What can we do for you? Yeah. But like you're saying with the umpires, I don't do it as a tactic, but it's a way you get much better service.
Well, you do. You do. It's like, it doesn't matter where you go. The taxi driver, who might on some occasions bore you to tears, but if you engage in some conversation that he's slightly interested in, he's going to lift your bag out of the boot.
Yeah.
He's not going to leave you there. I mean, and he's actually going to say thank you when you pay him. I mean, is that not what life's about? We struggle to find positives sometimes, and it's so easy to find negatives.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm at the stage now where I just live a ball. Absolutely, my wife and I just love being retired in Central Otago. We work when we want to, or not so much when we need to, hopefully. And I don't have any. I can't find any enemies, and I think it's a good way to be.
Yeah, perfect way to be. You're here in Dunedin for the Masters Games.
Yeah,
we've been talking for probably an hour and 20 minutes or so. We should probably thank the Masters Games for bringing you and tell the people a little bit what it's about and what you're doing here officially.
Absolutely love it. I was nervous, and I always am nervous when I say yes to a speech, and then you think it's going to be easy, and then the night before you think, what the hell did I say? When I came down here, I thought, I don't even know what I do. Ambassador of the Games. Jodie Brown and she's more experienced than I am. And she's
netballer, eh?
Yeah, and much younger and probably much easier for the people to have.
But not as easy on the eye as you, Warren.
I can imagine that. But a lot of people, it's like me being in the coach of New Zealand, a lot of people must have turned them down before they came to me. But when I got down here, 5,000 people, Masters Games. I've been so far in 2 days to 22 different sports.
Wow, cool.
I've found everyone smiling, everyone having fun, and people who can laugh at themselves, as we have to do in later life, because you're not going to perform the way you did when you're a 20-year-old.
Yep.
And I just absolutely loved it. I make brief speeches at different places, and I don't know whether they're laughing at me or with me sometimes, but they laugh,
yep.
and that's important. And I just talk about having fun at the games. And as I said before, I went to darts, I went to petanque, I've been to curling. Today I've got medals to give out at the bowling club. And it's just fun. And you're meeting people who are saying, hey, in a strange way, they don't say it. They tell you this in their eyes, the way they look. We're just grateful to be here, to be given the chance of still coming down. And I don't like the word competing so much, because competition's sort of gone out of it for some people.
Right.
They just want to laugh and have a ball. And in the evening, some of them even though they're in their 70s, they believe they're in their 20s, which is a mistake for some. And even accommodation. I brought my caravan down and I stay on the camping ground to actually be with the Masters Games.
Oh,
people.
Cool.
And it's much better than being in a cold hotel room and going down having a big dinner and all that sort of thing. I've decided that I like to be with the Masters Games, and they come from Australia, they come from the North Island, I don't care where they come from. And each
even
morning,
Auckland? Do you care how Auckland is?
I've actually I've watched some Aucklanders the other day playing bowls, and I put a medal around an Aucklander's neck.
You almost touched one.
I know. Well, I more than touched it. Yeah. So it's good fun, and I know we're here for 9 days, and I just think it's a really worthwhile thing. It's a huge thing for Dunedin City.
Yep.
I've learnt so many things in 3 days about the way Dunedin, to go to Logan Park, there cannot be better facilities anywhere in the country.
Yep.
And it's great that the City Council and the university work together over that, because it's just become such a huge facility for all of New Zealand, but in particular for Dunedin.
Yeah, so so what you're saying is if there are other people that want to run other kind of games, that Dunedin would be a good location to do it.
Well, they would be, but hey, they're never going to take the Masters game. Or it's every second year, and it's Wanganui. I just think the things I've found out, the Octagon being closed off. And I can understand business people in the Octagon saying it's going to affect our business. Well, it has. It's actually increased it, I'd say, twofold, just since they've had it. What a great place to be.
Yeah.
And I was in the Octagon this morning, and it's a busy place with people walking around and no buses and no trucks.
No, there's the to give credit where credit's due, the Dunedin City Council does do particular events well, and the first time not the first time I saw it, but one of the times I saw it was like when Ed Sheeran came to town. Same thing, locked off the Octagon, became basically a party zone for all of that Easter weekend, and it was good.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to be. And even though I live in Central Otago, and I decided to retire there because that's where we had our holiday place, and I love it up there. I seriously do. I get a wee bit emotional every time I come back to Dunedin because it's such a big part of me.
Nice. I hear you talking about WODs occasionally. So if people do want to hear from you, is there still a radio sport, occasional commentary you're doing?
Yeah, I don't travel far, so I don't even.
Alex and Dunedin, is that about it?
That's Queenstown if they ever get a game.
Yeah.
And even coming to Dunedin, I must admit I drive down in the morning and I drive home straight after it.
Right.
So the social part of it's not so much me anymore. But I enjoy doing the radio with Brian Waddle. He's been a good friend for a long time with me, and when I was coaching, we toured together. I think he's such a big part of New Zealand sport, and when he got his Queen medal, I thought it was so well deserved, and they're the people who are so often forgotten. Yeah, he didn't buy his award either.
I'm going to ask you one official interview question. Can I do one interview question, Jace? Just one.
Okay.
I think there was 19 or 20 international cricket events, men's cricket events in New Zealand for this summer. I think it was 20 games.
Do you know how many days?
One was in Dunedin. How do you feel about that?
There were 56. I shouldn't admit that I've looked this up because this is a bit of parochialism, really. 56 days of international cricket in the country.
Yeah.
There were only 2 days south of Christchurch. One of those days was a T20 double-header, men and women. And the other was...
That'd be Queenstown then?
No, Queenstown got nothing. There was Dunedin. So there's only 2 days in Dunedin during that whole time out of 56 days.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. The 24th of March or 28th of March is a Australia-New Zealand game here, which is great. I'm looking forward to it.
That's right.
But when I saw that on the schedule, I was like, crap, this feels not to play like the victim or the little brother too much out of 2 months worth, if you add all those days up, to have a day and a half or two in Dunedin doesn't seem to be a particularly fair spread.
No, and people will probably wonder why I looked that up, but it's history that makes me think of those things, because I think it's an absolute disgrace that we're promoting a game like cricket. I know it could be netball, it could be anything else.
Yep.
But you've got to promote it right around the whole country. But it comes to the excuse that's always money, you see. There's more people will go Mount Maunganui than might go in Dunedin or whatever. But to be fair, and fair is a funny word to use in sport sometimes, but to be fair, everyone deserves the opportunity.
Yeah.
I have one comment to make about money in sport. And it's something that it sort of hurts me a wee bit or irks me a wee bit. If every All Black and every Black Cap had $20,000 taken off their annual salary, would they still be available for the All Blacks and the Black Caps? I believe they would. The $20,000 you took off 40-odd people would go a hell of a long way around the country to supply gear for the kids in the little towns on the West Coast or in Taranaki or in Southland or wherever. How much money would those kids benefit from by having that? That's just a wee thought always.
And it's a wee thought to leave people with Warren Lees. Thanks for coming in. Really appreciate your time. It's been a hugely exciting conversation for me, if no one else. So thanks for coming in. It's been a blast.
I enjoyed it too. And if you've got nothing to do for the afternoon, I'll keep you going for another 4 hours. No. Thanks very much for having me. I enjoyed it. Cheers.